Friends, this is the United Kingdom, or Britannia. Yes, the very same Britannia where the sun once never set, in 72 modern nations, but today there's a shortage of doctors, nurses, and essential staff. Government schools are understaffed, and many school buildings are crumbling. The situation is dire. Even in the UK, the problems mirror those of third world countries. So, what is Britain like today, and how did it reach this state? Let's start with this graph. It shows the per capita income of the United Kingdom and the United States of America as a percentage of GDP. Until the 2007-8 financial crisis, both nations were nearly equal in GDP. There wasn't much of a gap. But after the crisis, America's graph surged upward, while the UK stayed stagnant, hovering close to its 2008 levels. This was the era of the richest G7 nations. But if we look at economic growth after COVID-19, the UK had the worst performing economy in 2020. Britannia's productivity growth also flatlined after 2008. Productivity measured as output per worker based on hourly rates has been stuck in a rut. And that's not all. In 2022, India overtook the UK to become the world's fifth largest economy. According to this trend, G7 leaders might still win elections in 2025, but the UK remains the worst performing machine among the G7. This is a problem that needs urgent attention. Now, the big question, why is there a productivity shortage in the very country where the Industrial Revolution began? Why isn't manufacturing the second most important sector here? When almost every other nation has been recovering over the last 2 decades from the impacts of COVID-19 and the 2008 financial crisis, why is the UK still struggling to escape these effects? In today's video, we'll explore these questions. This is the heart of our current debate. So, let's dive into the details about Britannia. The decline of Britannia has been a hot topic since 2007-8, but its foundations were laid much earlier. By the mid-20th century, the UK had already shifted from a manufacturing-based economy to a services-based one. From 1973 to 2007, Britannia's manufacturing sector didn't grow as fast as that of the US, Japan, France, or Germany. In fact, during this period, manufacturing declined and negative growth was observed in Britannia. That is, during this time, the manufacturing sector couldn't even maintain the level of capability it had in its earlier years. Manufacturing is the sector where growth drives a nation's productivity. But in Britannia, the rise has been in the services sector, especially financial services. This isn't unique to Britain. Most advanced economies have seen a shift where services contribute more to GDP than manufacturing. However, there's a downside to this sector. It requires mostly skilled workers, whereas manufacturing can employ both skilled and non-skilled labor. After the 2008 financial crisis, things got worse for Britain. The British government took on massive loans, primarily to bail out the banking sector. But the remaining manufacturing sector was neglected. Investments in manufacturing dwindled further, which, of course, hit productivity hard. The financial sector didn't exactly bounce back either in the years that followed. In the services game, Britain was already falling behind in the global tech sprint. Check Europe's biggest companies, not a single British name hits the trillion-dollar mark. The heavy hitters? Meta, Google, Amazon, all American. To claw back those loans, Conservative Minister David Cameron rolled out 2 big moves, a 50% tax hike and deep cuts to public spending, complete with budget slashes and austerity on steroids. It started at the top and bled down into vital sectors like health and social care. Less cash for healthcare meant more strained staff shortages piled up, and equipment grew outdated fast. Britannia's healthcare system is crumbling. Patients now see treatment delays as standard. Back in 2010, the National Health Service, NHS, was short 100,000 full-time doctors, nurses, and support staff. Education didn't escape the axe either. Budget cuts left schools understaffed and buildings rotting, untouched by repairs. Even now, the UK's education budget is £15 billion lighter than it was in 2010-11, about the same as the 2006-7 levels. It's a stark snapshot of public services gasping for air. Brits are shelling out hefty taxes, but getting shoddy returns. And get this, the top tax rate in Britannia peaks at 45%. Since 2008, the UK's been battered by a 1-2 punch, the financial crisis and the Brexit vote. Some argue ditching the EU was a misstep. Private businesses have taken a beating from the uncertainty, and investments ground to a halt. It's clear Britannia's recovery from the financial crisis fizzled out. Then came 2016, the Brexit referendum. With 52% voting to leave the EU, it was a gut punch to business. New trade barriers, customs headaches, and regulatory tangles jacked up costs and snarled supply chains. From 2016 to 2020, those hurdles choked the UK's comeback. By the time Britain officially cut ties with the EU in 2020, COVID-19 had already swept the globe. Friends, Brexit and COVID-19 tore through the UK like a double hurricane. Recovery hopes got smashed twice over. In 2020, the UK clocked the G7's worst-performing economy, Brexit being the prime culprit. Businesses, already strapped for cash, saw supply chains buckle under COVID's weight. The British government clapped on lockdowns and tight rules to curb the virus. But cases skyrocketed anyway, and the healthcare system cracked. As we've noted, austerity since 2008 had gutted health spending, leaving it too weak to weather the storm. The government couldn't shoulder this alone. Massive loans were the only lifeline to soften the pandemic's blow. In 2021, Rishi Sunak unveiled a £280 billion spending blitz. To tame inflation, the interest rate previously lounging at a record low 0.1% got a hike. But here's where it gets tricky. Inflation was already raging across the country, and then the Russia-Ukraine war in 2022 sent energy prices soaring, shoving inflation even higher. To wrestle it down, the Bank of England cranked the interest rate from 0.1% to a hefty 5.25%. That call piled more weight onto Britannia's economic shoulders. Wondering why they jacked up rates to tame inflation? Here's the deal. Central banks boost interest rates to make saving cash more tempting and slow down spending. Less money sloshing around means inflation takes a hit. But there's a flip side. Higher rates mean the government's stuck paying steeper interest on its mountain of debt. Picture this. You borrow one leg from a bank at 1% interest, that's $1,000 a year. Bump the rate to 5% and you're shelling out $5,000 annually. Now scale that up to billions, the interest tab gets downright monstrous. Post-Brexit, other sectors got slammed with a skilled worker shortage. Worse still, the UK's labor pool is shrinking. Friends, meet inactive labor folks of working age who aren't working or hunting for jobs. They don't even register as unemployed. After 2019, workers in most countries who lost jobs went looking for new ones. Not in Britain. Here, inactive labor spiked, the UK being the only G7 nation to see this. A big chunk of these folks? Early retirees now kicking back on pensions. The manufacturing sector's collapse, an obsession with services, the 2008 crash, Brexit, COVID-19, crushing debt, inactive labor, a skills gap, and the Ukraine war, all these have dragged Britannia down. Over time, this productivity blind spot has widened, leaving the UK trailing in too many arenas. Surveys and studies keep popping up, showing a chunk of 2016 Brexit backers now kicking themselves. British politics hasn't fared much better lately. Governments have been swapping out faster than you can blink, though that's not our main gig today. Friends, what's your take on Britannia's mess? Could sharper policies pull the UK back from the brink? More hurdles ahead or a shot at progress? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was ditching the European Union Britannia's blunder or a genius move? For more gripping videos and updates, hit that subscribe button for decoding facts.